World War Looms. This could also be called the rise of the dictators, because we're going to be looking at the 1920s and 1930s. We're going to be looking at Hitler in Germany, Tojo in Japan, Mussolini in Italy, Stalin in Russia, Soviet Union, and Franco in Spain. We're going to be looking at the 20s and 30s and basically leading up to World War II. Nationalism grips Europe and Asia. For many nations, the end of the Great War, World War I, brought revolution fueled by economic depression and struggle. So the revolution, the first one that happened was the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, which actually created communism, and you had Lenin in charge there. The post-war years saw the rise of powerful dictators, driven by the belief in nationalism and territorial expansion. Nationalism is basically the idea that your country is the best country in the world. No other country comes even close. It's extreme patriotism. It was a big influence in World War I, and it was a big part of World War II. And all of these dictators, of course, wanted territorial expansion to grow their countries and to have more space and to have more resources and to grow their country. The Depression hit Europe and Asia earlier than it hit the United States. It hit the entire world. It was a worldwide depression, but with Germany after World War I having to pay reparations and had to lose a lot of their military and their spending, and their mark had hyperinflation. They had a Great Depression. It was very severe. And all of these countries had struggle with economic depression, and they turned to dictators to help them out or move them out of this. So here's the pictures of the dictators. So on the top part, right up here, top left, this is Hideki Tojo. Here is our Hitler. Everybody knows him. It's just a younger picture. This is a picture of Francisco Franco. This is Mussolini. And this is a young, suave, debonair man. This was Stalin. So this is the picture of Stalin, and we'll come back and show you a later picture of Stalin just to compare the two. The failure of Versailles, the Treaty of Versailles. The treaty was trying to secure a just and secure peace, but it did not do that. The Treaty of Versailles caused anger and resentment in Germany. Anger and resentment because they had to basically take blame for the war. So they were the only one that was to be blamed for the war. They had to pay reparations to England and France. They lost territory. It was just a disaster for Germany, and they never got over it. New democratic governments that were installed, that emerged in Europe after World War I failed. With no democratic tradition in these countries, many nations turned to authoritarian rulers. Mussolini in Italy, Hitler in Germany, Franco in Spain, and then Tojo in Japan. Stalin in the Soviet Union. Lenin was the first leader of the Soviet Union. He led the Bolshevik Revolution, the Communist Revolution, and he died in 1924. Stalin gained complete control over all of the Russias in the Soviet Union. He made agricultural and industrial growth the prime economic goals of the USSR. And in 1928, Comrade Stalin introduced the first five-year plan to direct industrialization. So here's a picture of Stalin. So this is a more current one that we see with the wonderful mustache, and that's what he looked like. So if we go back here, there he is right here. A little bit different look on that for him. In his drive to eliminate anyone who threatened his power, Stalin did not even spare his most faithful supporters. He actually had a purge in the 1930s where he purged all of his leadership and people that were some of his faithful supporters. Historians estimate that Stalin was responsible for the deaths of 18 to 13 million Russians alone. I've heard some estimates in the 20 million that he killed, but he definitely 8 to 13 is conservative. 1939, Stalin firmly establishes a totalitarian state. Individuals have no rights, and the government suppresses all opposition. And then this is a great quote from Stalin: "Death is the solution to all problems. No man, no problem." Joseph Stalin. So that's a great little quote there showing his idea about that. In schools, it was interesting. The school children, instead of the Pledge of Allegiance, their pledge that they said every day was, "Thank you, Comrade Stalin, for this bright and glorious day." There was no God in communism. It was the leader. He was the God there. So This was a couple of Stalin's quotes and things that they had to do for that. So here we have Hitler and Mussolini. So you can see most of them are kind of the same, but Hitler was called Der Fuhrer and Mussolini was called El Duce. In Germany, it was the Nazi Party, which was a fascist party. The political party with Mussolini was actually called the Fascist Party, and he created it. And fascism is this idea that you will mold the government and business together. So, in the Fascist Party, in Congress, in their legislature, it was all people from business that were part of the legislature. There was a big basic joining of government and business to work together. And business was tied to the war machine, to all the different parts of the economy. And Hitler did the same thing in Germany. And these companies would be in charge, and they made war profits, and they made profits from doing these things. So it was very good for Hitler and Mussolini to get business leaders behind them and working together. Now, in Germany, Hitler gained power in 1933, whereas Mussolini gains power in 1922. So he was earlier. I think Hitler got a lot of his ideas and information from Mussolini. And at the beginning, he definitely admired Mussolini and what he was doing and how he got his power and how he got his control and what he did. Hitler did gain power by the electoral process. He was in elections. He was very popular. He was second in the election in 1932, and the president of Germany basically gave Hitler the title of like prime minister and leader, and then Hitler went from there. Both Hitler and Mussolini were brilliant orators, so they were great speakers. They were captivating. And I'm going to show you a video of Hitler giving a speech, and you can see how he's very animated, and his voice and his tone and how he was. It just captured people. They crushed the opposition. Both Hitler and Mussolini crushed the opposition to them in other political parties, didn't allow other parties. Both of them were nationalists, the extreme patriotism. Hitler was a little bit, actually a lot bit more racist, and Mussolini was not as racist as Hitler. He probably had some racist beliefs, but he didn't have anything like getting rid of the Jewish population or getting rid of any ethnic population. Both of them had expansionist goals. They both had the idea to take over countries, to expand militarily. So this is a comparison of Hitler and Mussolini. Hitler is synonymous with Nazism, that's his political party. According to Hitler, stressed three important goals. Number one, extreme nationalism. All German-speaking peoples were to be united. That was from Austria to Czechoslovakia to Poland to where they were in Russia, wherever. So all German-speaking peoples were to be united into one country. Aryans were the master race destined to rule the world. And then for Germany to thrive, it needed more Lebensraum, or living space. And I have a little video for you out on Lebensraum, so for living space. And it'll explain, it's like a minute long about that. Tojo takes over Japan. Hideki Tojo becomes Japan's prime minister in 1941. Emperor Hirohito loses power. Like Hitler, Tojo was an expansionist who desired to enlarge his nation's sphere of influence. In 1937, Japan invades Nanking and commits unspeakable atrocities against the Chinese. More than 300,000 were dead from rape, torture, and infanticide, which is killing of babies and young. Many people think this 1937 was the start of World War II. Others would say 1931 with Japan's invasion of Manchuria, which is closer to Japan, was the beginning of World War II. And in many ways, Tojo and Japan were like Nazi Germany and Hitler. Tojo felt the Japanese were the superior master race. They also had their own SS squads. They also had their own scientists that did experiments. They did all of the same things that Hitler did in the atrocities, terrible with prisoners of war camps. They were terrible in how they treated people. They got rid of the opposition. But it was very interesting. I've actually made some statements and asked students they figure out who this is, and they always said it was Hitler in Germany when it was actually Tojo in Japan. So they're very similar in their beliefs, and it's very fascinating. They also believed that they were the master race. Franco in Spain. 1936, a group of Spanish army officers led by Francisco Franco rebel against the Spanish government. The Spanish Civil War begins. Stalin backed the Spanish communists. Hitler and Mussolini backed Franco's nationalists. 1939, after about 500,000 deaths, 500,000, Franco gained complete control and the war is over. Many feel that this was like a test run of World War II, where both Hitler, Mussolini, and Stalin sent weapons to different sides. They had their planes, their uh, army. They just were training for war, and they were just beginning to do this. And they used Spain as like a test ground for what was to come in 1939, 1940, and so on. So Franco gained control over Spain right there. He did not do anything really with any territory expansion, and he was basically not really involved too much with World War II. He had gotten complete control, and they had to recover from their civil war, which was deadly. Here's a very interesting cartoon. So just take a look at the cartoon, see what you see in them. So you've got two of a mind. So you've got the League of Nations, the League Court. You have the Internationalist in the middle. On the right, you can see that looks like an older man with a hat that's looking like Uncle Sam. So that's the United States, stating, "I'm not going in." And then you have Japan with on the sleeve, looks like maybe a Japanese person going, "I'm not going back." And that's in the League of Nations. So he's leaving. One is leaving. One is saying, "I'm not going in." And then you have the internationalists. So this is like two of a mind looking at Japan and the United States. Very interesting cartoons that you can get from there. U.S. response. Although alarmed by the upheavals in Europe, the U.S. does not want to get involved in any other overseas conflict. They basically felt that they were tricked into World War One. They didn't want to get involved in Europe's messy conflicts and things like that. So the United States was very isolationist and wanted to stay away from any problems in Europe or in Asia. In an effort to keep the U.S. out of future wars, Congress passed the Neutrality Acts in 1935. This outlawed arms sales or loans to nation at war. So I'm going to be showing you some videos about the neutrality, about Hitler, about Mussolini, Stalin, Tojo. So you're going to have these videos. They're going to take about, I figure, about 41 minutes. Please take notes on what we just covered here, and then take notes on the videos, and then turn them into the classroom for that. And hopefully this makes a little bit of sense. This is World War Looms, The Rise of the Dictators.